So it's nice to virtually be with you today. I would have logged in earlier if I knew there were door prizes up for grabs. But I'm here today to talk to you all about triads. And many of you may be already familiar with the triad concept, but it is a tool for crime prevention that we use here in Virginia, and it is also national in scope. So I understand there are some folks from outside of Virginia who are participating today, and triads may exist in your area as well, and I'll direct you to some resources about those. So I'm going to get us started by sharing my screen. And hopefully everyone can see that. And try and make it so I can continue to see Q&A. But I'll pay more attention to Q&A at the end. So if I don't get to a question you put in the Q&A, trust me, I will get to it before we end today. So my name's Shannon Freeman. I'm the Director of Programs and Outreach in the Office of Attorney General Mark Herring. I am located here I'm coming to you from Chesterfield County, Virginia. My office is in Richmond, Virginia. So I will say, as many of us have had to adapt to so much more virtual interaction, we are live in my kitchen. I have 3 cats. 2 are, I think, safely in another room to not disturb me. 1 is running amok, so I do have my water bottle in case she starts causing shenanigans. So anyway, I'm going to be talking to you today about triads as a crime prevention tool. And triads are definitely something that we value here in Virginia. And in fact, here in Virginia, we are the only state that has a triad leadership management out of an executive branch statewide office. So I want to emphasize, however, that when I talk about triad is not a program of the Attorney General's office. We provide technical assistance. We help resource local triad chapters, but they are not an arm of our office. They are not an extension of us. They are very much community driven. However, we like to help communities create and sustain these working groups to address the crime prevention needs of the seniors within their community. So with that said, what is Triad? Triad is basically a cooperative effort of, we think of triad, 3, think of a triangle, 3 different legs. So we have law enforcement as 1 leg. We have agencies that work with seniors. So that can be an area agency on aging. That can be an ombudsman's office out of city or county government. That can be medical staff. That can be an organization that does feeding programs. Any group that is advocating or working with seniors. They're that 2nd leg of triad. And then seniors themselves make up that 3rd leg. So I often get asked by people, what does triad stand for? So the word triad isn't, those letters aren't standing for anything. It's just designating those 3 key stakeholders that are involved in any triad. And you'll note I mentioned law enforcement first. That is a really important component of a successful triad, is that law enforcement participation and buy-in. Because the whole point of triad is to leverage the resources within a community to better assist seniors, make them less vulnerable, keep them safe. And law enforcement are certainly a key component in that undertaking. So before we dive into what a triad is and how they function and operate and what they do within a community, we have to address why triads are so important, particularly now. What we know is that over the past 20 years, 25 years, and this isn't something that is ending, this is continuing into the foreseeable future, what we see happening is what we term the graying of America. You may have heard that term in the past. At its core, what we're talking about is people living longer, people not having as many babies as they used to. And so statistically, when you look at the portion of a population, the portion of 65 and older adults is growing and continues to grow here in the United States. So today, there are more than 46 million people over the age of 65 here in the United States. And when you look at, and we, like I said, those trends are going to continue to grow. And so what you see here is population growth over time and those percentages that are, or those amounts that are what we would consider senior. Okay, so we see that very steep increase. We could just spend a whole session talking about what's causing that, why that is. But I want to point out that that trend holds true here in the Commonwealth as well. So you'll see here, based on the 2020 census, Virginia's population over 65 is at about 16%. So we have, what, 8.5 million people here in Virginia, and currently about 1.5 million are over the age of 65. And what we know is that as these trends continue, by the year 2040, just about 1 in 5 Virginians will be over the age of 65. Now, I pulled this graphic from the VPAP website. Some of you may be familiar with VPAP. It is a statistical bonanza if you ever take a look at it. Virginia Public Access Project. You can learn so much. But what I think is particularly interesting as you look at this map of Virginia broken into counties and cities is that you see those dark green pockets. And those pockets, the darker the county or the city, the higher the percentage of the population that is over 65 is. And so you see those dark green pockets where we have currently, nearly a third or more of the population in those areas are over the age of 65. And like I said, that's not a trend that's going anywhere. That's a trend that's going to continue. So when we talk about Triad and we talk about these chapters or these community groups that are working to promote crime prevention and crime reduction, make seniors less vulnerable, etc. Here's just a little bit of history. I mentioned that Triad is a national program, and it was started in the late 80s, early 90s, and brought stakeholders to the table. And at that time, there were 3 main partners. AARP, who you would certainly expect to be at the table for something like this. And in many of our local Triad chapters, AARP is an active partner or participant. The International Association of Chiefs of Police, so bringing in police departments, and the National Sheriff's Association, NSA. And actually, the National Sheriff's Association, on a national scale, still manages the Triad program nationally. That they kind of fell off the radar for a little while. They had lost funding to have a designated staff person to provide assistance and promote Triad nationally. But recently, and when I say recently, I mean over the past probably 3 or 4 months, they sustained some grant funding, and they do now have a national Triad coordinator, and that's through the National Sheriff's Association. So here in Virginia, we established an office a Triad office out of the Office of the Attorney General. And we did that in 1995. That was one of the reasons, among so many others, that last year, the COVID quarantine, et cetera, which caused the cancellation of our statewide Triad conference, one of the reasons it made us so sad was not only because it's always a great, informative, and super fun conference, was that we were going to be celebrating Virginia's 25th anniversary as a state promoting Triad. So we were going to celebrate 25 years of Triad, and we didn't have the opportunity to do that the way we wanted. But when we are in a position to gather folks together beyond the virtual realm, we certainly will be celebrating that at that time. So in Virginia, our office established a Triad office, a Triad coordinator or Triad director position, which we have maintained in some form or another over the past 25 years. And basically, the role of our office has been, like I mentioned earlier, helping locations that wanted to start Triads and providing ongoing support and technical assistance for those groups. But again, Triad is driven at the local level because communities are different and the needs of seniors in different parts of the state vary and the access to resources vary. So when I talk about Triad as a crime prevention tool, it's important to think about a few key ideas, and we're going to be talking about these. One, seniors as victims of crime. Why might they be targeted? Two, can you think about what kinds of crimes are seniors particularly vulnerable to, and how do we leverage community resources to address that vulnerability? And lastly, what else can communities do through a Triad program, gathering together seniors regularly, communicating with seniors, offering up opportunities to decrease their susceptibility to crime in whatever format it appears. So, thinking about why seniors might be victims of a crime. If we were in person, I could listen to you all shout out a ton of different reasons why seniors might be vulnerable, right? They could be vulnerable because people assume they have assets, right? They've lived in their home a long time, more likely to own it, potentially get retirement benefits, get a pension, have access to health insurance. So people think that seniors may have assets, and that makes them targets. They may also be targets because they may be more trusting, right? Their isolation may increase their willingness to trust someone that is reaching out to them, someone that is showing them support, showing them kindness, showing interest in their lives and their stories, etc. And also, as we see an increase in the types of crime, when we look at the types of crimes that seniors are most susceptible to, and we see an increase in technology used to facilitate or to commit those crimes, seniors may be less savvy with technology. So that also can make them an easy target. Now, as I hear myself already doing it, and you all may be prone to doing it as well, I do want to emphasize that while we can, speak in some generalities about Virginia's seniors or our nation's seniors, we want to be careful to not look at them as a monolith. Seniors are not all one lump group. They have a wide range of, we talk about technology, a wide range of technical savvy, a wide range of technical capacity. They may have a wide range of, in terms of their health. They may be a very vital 85, or they may be have more health restrictions at age 67. So, we have to leave room in our discussion of seniors to accommodate the fact that they range widely in terms of their age, their health, their capacity. So definitely keep that in mind. To what kinds of crimes are seniors particularly vulnerable? I mentioned a little bit about technology use, but we see seniors being particularly vulnerable to economic crimes, property crimes, and then to a lesser extent, we see violent crimes, and certainly we see elder abuse at the hands of a caregiver, and other ways that may show itself or yield itself. But a lot of times the work that Triads are doing is to keep seniors educated on those financial scams, frauds. Recently we've spent the last year really talking to seniors about COVID-related scams. We saw a lot of scams coming out in conjunction with testing, early in the pandemic, scams around getting tested for COVID, scams around the stimulus checks that were released at various points in the year. So lots of fraudsters taking advantage of those opportunities, and some of the confusion that surrounded that. And currently we see scams abounding around getting people signed up for getting their vaccine. And so, the folks that commit these crimes follow the news, follow the trends, see where they can make inroads, see where they can take advantage of any confusion, any doubt, headlines in the news. And so Triads are a good communication tool to help prevent some of that. We're going to talk about that question of leveraging community triad programs in just a bit. So when we talk about triads, and again, we're talking about a group of people coming together, law enforcement, agencies serving seniors, and also the seniors within a community themselves. When we talk about what Triad's about, we're really focusing on support and fellowship, providing social connection and opportunity for seniors. So teaching them, educating them on community resources and consumer protection and crime reduction, safety, reducing their risk of being frauded. But also the other side of that coin is fun, fellowship. So having that education, having those seminars or whatever, but also building community and helping seniors find that community, particularly if they are more isolated and don't have that built-in community already. Okay. So what are the benefits of a triad group? You can see here, and I've talked a little bit about this already. It's about educating seniors about resources, about frauds and scams, letting them have faces behind phone numbers to call, so they know the crime prevention officers within their community. They know the chief, the sheriff, or some of their designees. So they are more likely to reach out if they have questions or something shady goes on, after something like a natural disaster, hurricanes or something like that. Somebody going door to door, showing up on a porch to ask, oh, you want me to clear those trees? That's really dangerous. You give me cash, I'll clean the trees out of your yard. And if that senior has participated in Triad, been a part of community updates, been to some training, that may raise red flags for that senior that would not have been raised had they not participated in that. So It also helps build partnerships, not just between seniors and those community partners, but that gives the community partners space to network, collaborate with one another. And also, again, those social opportunities, Triad, can be a lot of fun. So I like to point that out. So when we talk about Triad, and I've shared some of this already, this is just another kind of listing of those folks who are at the table, who often participate in a local Triad chapter. And most Triads, although COVID has put a wrench in things, most Triads are having monthly meetings. So they're bringing people together. Triads are typically led by a leadership team. In Virginia, we call them the SALT Council, seniors and law enforcement together. So those Triads have their leadership team and then elected leadership that map out or plan the course of the activities for that group over the course of a year, and are always on the lookout of folks to partner with, to bring in speakers, to bring in programs, and to bring in resources so that seniors have access to those. All right. And lastly, you'll see listed here who's at the table. It says the Office of the Attorney General. I've mentioned our office providing technical assistance to our local Triads. And that is from the point of discussions about formation on through to maintenance of that Triad. So we do help as localities decide that Triad is something that they're interested in, because we have in each part of the state regional community outreach coordinators. We actually have a couple of them that are participating in today's program. Debbie Bell, who's our outreach coordinator in the Roanoke area, and Amy Duncan, who's our outreach coordinator out in the far southwest part of the state. And our community outreach coordinators not only participate in local Triad chapters, but also are often helping with, by presenting information, sharing updates, and then also finding resources, speakers, etc. So you may be wondering, well, you may not be wondering, you may already be participating in a Triad within your community. Or you may be sitting there wondering, never even heard of Triad. I wonder if my community has a Triad. So we do have a listing on our website of local Triads with contact information. I will provide the caveat, though, that we are in the process of updating it currently. So some of the information is a little bit dated. We have 2021 Triad we're getting, that we're distributing amongst our Triad leadership for the various Triad chapters across the state, so that we can update that listing that's on our website. But we can always be a resource for a locality that is wondering if they do have a Triad or who they should reach out to get engaged in their local Triad. A lot of localities do have them. Over 200 cities and counties, localities in the Commonwealth are partnering with Triads. So it is very pervasive across the Commonwealth. If there isn't one in your town or in your city or in your locality, there's one not far away. But if there isn't one, then how can we help you create one? And again, I mentioned the central tenet, that central leg of Triad being law enforcement. So law enforcement buy-in is really going to be step number one. So these are some of the considerations for an agency or for a group, an organization, or an individual who's looking to help start a Triad chapter within their community. Looking at the community need, who is already interested, identifying those organizations, like we mentioned in previous slides, who should be around the table and who should be a part of that discussion, who's already doing the work in your community, helping seniors access resources, whether they are working in the health department or the library or the local hospital. Who's already engaged? You certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. And our outreach coordinators can also be really helpful in helping link newer triads, startup triads, to more established triads to get help with things like bylaws, hearing how other triads conduct their meetings, what types of speakers they've had come in to do programs. So that information sharing network is really, really useful. Beyond our outreach coordinators, another really useful tool or resource for Virginia triads is our state SALT Council. I mentioned SALT, Seniors and Leadership Together, that leadership team for an individual triad chapter. And there is a state SALT Council, and that group meets every other month. It's made up of leadership from local triad chapters, as well as other statewide organizations that are doing senior-focused work across the Commonwealth. And again, a large part of their work is information sharing. So identifying the latest scams, the latest resources, sharing speaker ideas and information and programming that has been successful. All right. You see there that as an organization or as a triad chapter kind of comes together and starts thinking about the work that they want to do within a community, there are things to keep in mind. How often is the group going to meet? Like I said, most meet monthly. Of course, again, COVID has thrown that train off the rails a little bit. But many have switched to virtual platforms for meeting. Some have even, and in some cases our office has helped facilitate sessions for seniors who aren't familiar with platforms like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google Meets. And so helping seniors pivot to using these kinds of technology has been a project in some localities. So establishing meeting locations and times. In some triads, they're meeting in senior centers, or they're meeting in a senior community to make it easier for folks to join and participate. Thinking about programming, most localities host a triad signing. That's a ceremony where the leadership within that community, whether that's the mayor or the chair of the board of supervisors, the attorney general comes to signing ceremonies, other leadership within a community who agree to partner to make a triad happen within a community. And then start hosting meetings. So there are a lot of considerations and a lot of challenges. What brings people to meetings? We know food. So is there funding? Does the law enforcement agency have any funding set aside that the chapter can use? Our office makes mini grants available to triad chapters as we have the money to do that. So we try and do that annually. What topics are hot? What topics are interesting? How do we get folks to meetings? More rural localities have some challenges. Some triads rotate the locations of their meeting to make it more accessible for potential attendees. What kinds of programs might a triad have at a meeting? They may have public safety updates from their law enforcement participants. They may have presentations on a variety of topics. I've presented at triads on Romeo scams, seniors and online dating, that kind of thing. Because we talk about seniors and technology, seniors are the fastest growing population of online daters. So, that is a topic that some may not realize is interesting to seniors. Some hold proms and health and safety fairs. They go on picnics. They go on field trips. Petersburg has a very robust triad. They take a bus to Atlantic City and gamble. They do a lot of cool things out of Petersburg's triad. Shred-a-thons are very, very popular, very common. So lots of different ideas for programming within a locality. And then just quickly, I know I'm out of time, but I want to talk just a little more about what our office does to support Triads. I mentioned the annual conference. We try and hold that annually, but we didn't have it in 2020, and we are not having it in 2021, but in 2022, we will be back in person. Keep those fingers crossed. I mentioned our outreach coordinators. I mentioned mini grants. We also do regional summits for Triad leadership. Again, bringing folks together to share information and share ideas, because that's where the best stuff happens, when it's not happening in silos and people are sharing information. There's my boss, Attorney General Herring, talking about the importance of Triad, helping seniors adapt to public safety threats, which is certainly our focus, not wanting them to be vulnerable and taken advantage of. And I wanted to share with you information about our outreach coordinators in each part of the state. So you'll see there our listing of our 5 regional outreach coordinators, David, Debbie, Stephen, William, and Amy. So that is how one could get in touch with their regional person. Those are their email addresses. And then there is my contact information and also some information about the Triad page of our website.